Money Stop Mafia, welcome to your most important NASCAR betting stop of the day. And boy, do we have a treat for you. There's only one box on your screen. It's Cole Cusumano, Steven Cusumano, recording an episode of the Money Stop together for the first time this year. It feels like this should happen more often than it does, Cole, but here we're in the Garden State of New Jersey, and there's a good reason for that, too. It's because you're going to be covering the race in Dover this week. Coming off another big week last week where SVG dominated at Sonoma. He's now a three-time race winner this year, tied for the most wins in the series this season. And, man, we're together right now. This is incredible.
I know. It's a first. It feels great. I hope we look great as well. I'm absolutely fired up to go meet Miles the Monster face-to-face. It's been on my bucket list. I know it's on your bucket list. Has been for a long time. One of our unanimously favorite tracks on the circuit for sure. And it's always great to be back here on the East Coast. Obviously came out here to go to the Dover race for SpeedFreaks, but we also got the chance to spend some time upstate New York where we used to hang out growing up with our cousins, and that was a blast. Got to detach a little bit, recharge, and get some more inspiration here for the Dover race this weekend. But yeah, coming off another really successful weekend at Sonoma, just phenomenal. Want to run through it here real quick?
Yeah, before you do that, I want to talk about how I love Dover, and I want to hold up my signed Jimmy Johnson card. Shout out to my man Mark Russinoff for adding this to my collection. How do you not talk about Mr. Dover himself without going to Dover? That's all the motivation you need for this week. Yeah. We want to win as much as Jimmy did at Dover. But, man, this week, you mentioned SVG. We had the entire top four this week. I mean, it feels like a broken record, the amount of times we've had this happen, but we had four of the top five: SVG, Chase Briscoe, Chase Elliott, Michael McDowell, who raced back up into the top five after being behind a little bit in stage three, Tyler Reddick, Ty Gibbs in sixth and seventh, and one of our favorite value pick sleepers, Ryan Preece, wound up in 12th. So we had successfully chosen four of the top five, six of the top 10, and seven of the top 12. So this was another week, Cole, where it just the road courses have been our bread and butter pretty much since this podcast started, and that trend held to be true. I guess the thing I would point out is that, we were assessing the value of SVG last week, how he was a heavy favorite. What was it, plus 150, plus 200? We kind of both agreed. Like, he was one of our favorites. We thought he was, the shoe-in to win this race, but we both kind of agreed that was probably a little bit too steep of a value to make it a bargain for you to bet on. But I think going forward, like when we go to the next road course of Watkins Glen, it doesn't matter what that value is. And it's going to be probably beneath even money. It's probably going to be minus 150, minus 200 when we go to Watkins Glen, and you're still going to bank out on that. So that there's nothing else to think about next time we go to a road course. And, again, it's not like we weren't saying not to pick him. We just said it's not the best value among the favorites. And sure enough, I mean, that if you bet enough on it, it was a value.
No, absolutely. I think the rule of thumb going forward now is that whenever we go to a road course, you're picking SVG for the race win. And at a bare minimum, if not race win, a top three prop finish, which even that was like below even payout. But obviously, there is a strong 95% chance that's going to happen. So, that's the rule of thumb going forward. It makes things interesting for Dover because obviously going back-to-back road courses or street courses in Chicago and Sonoma, you had a very different complexion for top five shortest and odds for the race win. That's going to, I guess, reset the mindset going into these races as we go to more traditional tracks, or I guess untraditional as well in Dover, which is concrete, obviously. But it makes you think about other drivers that maybe weren't having the best seasons to this point in the season, with the playoffs now down to 6 races until that. Guys like Kyle Busch, who have had really good runs, Tyler Reddick, Chase Briscoe, guys that really were in need of a good run to formulate something going forward. It's going to be interesting to assess them for Dover, but cannot wait to get out to this one. It's going to be a blast.
Dover has been the Hendrick playground for a lot of the recent memory, especially in this next-gen era where we've seen 1, 2, 3, 4 finishes from that camp. But looking at the pre-qualifying odds this week, the favorite is actually Denny Hamlin at plus 450. You got Kyle Larson at plus 500. Ryan Blaney's plus 650. William Byron's plus 750. And Chase Elliott rounds out the top 5 at plus 1,000. So that's pretty much a who's who of what you would expect. I guess what's different for me going into this week, Cole, is that Hendrick Motorsports doesn't feel like one of the hotter teams right now. Obviously, William Byron and Kyle Larson had their heydays early in the season. We've seen Chase Elliott peaking at a really good time right now, and Alex Bowman's kind of been somewhere in the middle. We've seen some pretty solid runs out of that 48 crew, but I think going into this week, where it profiles as a place where all 4 cars should race really well and put up a good result. They haven't exactly been doing that over the last month or so stretch of races. So with that being said, why don't you kick off these favorites with one of the guys that's not a Hendrick Chevy?
Yeah, perfectly said, by the way. I mean, we always think of HMS when we go to Dover, namely for that 1, 2, 3, 4 finish, as you mentioned a couple of years back. But yeah, at this point in the season, we had SVG obviously win his 3rd race of his rookie campaign, which is tied for the most in the series with Christopher Bell, Kyle Larson, and the odds-on favorite in Denny Hamlin. And I'm going to take a non-Hendrick Chevy as my personal favorite for this weekend because, as you mentioned, they've kind of been, hit or miss outside of Chase Elliott. So with Denny Hamlin, in regard to him, again, shortest odds for the race win at plus 450. $11,000 in daily fantasy, which actually is not the most expensive driver in the lineup roster there. But he's the only driver not named SVG that has looked good of those drivers with the most wins this season at this point. He has top 5 in 4 of his last 6 starts, so that's incredible, especially when you consider the fact that his only outliers were the Atlanta race, which was just complete mayhem, and he finished 20th at Sonoma this past weekend, which was, as we noted numerous times, not that 11-team strong suit in the next gen on the road courses. So also want to know he finished top 5. One of those was at Chicago. So even when he goes to these tracks where he has not been historically great, especially with this current car in the Gen 7, he's looked good. So I think of these upper tier drivers like your Larsons, like your Bells, like your Byrons, he's definitely the guy that you want to have most confidence in going into Dover, especially when you consider the fact that he's a 2-time winner here, and he also won the most recent race at the Monster Mile. So most laps led last year. He has laps led over his last 4 starts at that 1-mile track, more than 540 over his last 7 starts, with a 15.6 average in 34 total. So he's been one of the most experienced drivers at this track. He's riding back-to-back top 5s there. I think he's going to be a really, really good pick for at least a top 5 day here at the Monster Mile. But we cannot talk about favorites without talking about Hendrick Motorsports. And I think, as you alluded to, the best driver from that stable right now has got to be Chase Elliott.
For sure.
I think he's the best value among the favorites as well, plus 1,000 for the race win. Best value in daily fantasy as well. I believe he's actually our cheapest driver in our favorite segment here at $10,000.
Yeah.
He scored his 4th top 5 over his last 5 races just recently. And for that, he is now only 13 points behind teammate William Byron for the regular season points lead. Also posting the series best 10.2 average finish in that span. So don't want to talk too much on that because we could just talk for hours about how consistent he's been the last couple of years, how he's finished inside the top 20 every single race thus far. So don't want to get too deep in the weeds there, but he's been just flat out amazing, so consistent. And along with Denny, he is the only other active multi-race winner at Dover back in 2018 and 2022, the first race in the Gen 7 era. Second best average in the series with 9.5. Also tied for the best next-gen finish at 5.7. So he has been really good at this track. 10 top 10s and 14 starts. Lowest finish of 11th over his last 4, and nearly 400 laps led in that span. So I think, to put it simply, my 2 favorites this weekend have got to be Denny Hamlin and Chase Elliott.
And part of what you mentioned at the beginning there is that there's only 6 races left before the playoffs. And a lot of times when we get to this kind of crunch time point, you think about the fact that there are drivers that need wins. You think about also the regular season points battle. And you mentioned the fact Chase Elliott is right on William Byron's tail for the most regular season points. In third on that list would be Kyle Larson, who is the most expensive driver, 11,500. He's plus 500 for the race win. And for Kyle Larson, he's finished outside the top 30. He finished 35th at Sonoma. That was his 3rd straight finish outside of the top 10 to put him 19 points back from 3rd place. So he's right up there. I think you're going to be monitoring this points battle between those 3 Hendrick drivers going into these last few weeks. And for Kyle Larson, he is a 1-time race winner at Dover, 2019. Since then, he's had 2 second-place finishes, one of them including last year, and had a 6th-place finish in the next-gen car in addition to that runner-up last year. 8.2 average finish at Dover is the lowest, meaning the best among all drivers in the sport during this era. And he has over 900 laps led in 16 starts here, which is the 3rd most. So Kyle Larson, I know it's been a very inconsistent period for that team, but if there's any place for them to get it back on track, it has to be Dover. And I think that success is contagious with the Hendrick Chevys. I think that when they unload good and they're sharing notes, I think that's why they've had such good success at Dover in the past. This is a track that they all perform very well at. And I'd look at the same vein for William Byron, who's plus 750 for the race win, 10,500 for daily fantasy. He finished 8th at Sonoma last week, and that snapped a 3-race skid of 27 finishes or worse. And he had a DNF last year at Dover with 30 laps led, though. So that's a little bit fluky of a result, but ran well there, led some laps. 2023 matched his career best 4th place finish there for the 3rd time in his career. And he led the most laps in 2023 with 193. So he's had laps led in 3 of his last 4 Dover starts. I think that, as we get closer to the playoffs too, like, there was a point early in the season you thought Kyle Larson and William Byron were the 2 best drivers in the sport that had the best shoe-in to win a championship. And it's not just about the regular season points battle. It's also about the fact that they need to get back on track in time for the playoffs, because you hear about it all the time where you have a strong regular season, but if you limp into the playoffs, you could be a 1st, 2nd, or 3rd round exit if you're not coming to play. And obviously the bonus points are a big part of that, but performance-wise, they need to get back on the right track. And if they don't do it this week at Dover, those 2 drivers specifically, my favorites of Kyle Larson and William Byron, if they don't do it this week, that's when it's going to start to raise your concern a little bit about, are they going to do it? Because it's got to happen at a track that they've been running so well at historically recently.
Yeah, no, the standard for HMS at Dover is to finish inside the top 5. Bottom line. And I'm looking, like you said, specifically at Kyle Larson and William Byron to rebound. In the case of Kyle Larson rebounding, obviously, that 3-race skid's pretty dramatic. But looking for William Byron to have some more trust in him going forward. He was off our outline for the last 3 weeks, I want to say, which was unheard of for the first, and whatever it was, 10 plus races. Exactly.
Right.
So you go with the feel, you go with what you see. And I feel like the HMS Chevy is going to be great this weekend. And on Kyle Larson, as of recording here at 1 a.m. here in New Jersey.
Could you tell?
Kyle Larson won the high limit race actually tonight. So as we have seen, that usually bodes very well for Sundays. So look out for that 5 team here at the Monster Mile.
Well, let's talk sleepers here too, Cole, because obviously you were expecting us to say Denny Hamlin and 3 of the 4 Hendrick Chevys. I want to start our sleepers category by mentioning Tyler Reddick, because he's been a guy that, if you've been a loyal listener the last several weeks, he's been very much on our radar. We saw some good glimpses, good results recently, backed it up again with another top 10 at Sonoma, 6th place. That's back-to-back top, just outside the top 5 now. And he's 5th place in the points, minus 48 back. So he's another name to monitor in terms of somebody that, yes, has underperformed a little bit this year, but you look up and he's got back-to-back near top 5s, and he's got himself 5th place in the point standing. So all it takes is one good stretch from that team to get themselves right back to where we thought they would be at this point, 19 races into the season. And, they get a win. They get a couple wins in a row. Like we've seen Kyle Larson get red hot, Christopher Bell get red hot, William Byron, obviously SVG now. All it takes is one, and he could be a back-to-back race winner. Like this team, again, talking about peaking at the right time. Like they've done just enough to keep themselves sort of in the running order through these middle slog months of the season. And now as you start to see them picking up speed, that is something that the competition should be very scared of. And when I think of Tyler Reddick, he's coming off a career best finish of 7th at Dover in 2023. He has 2 top 10s and 6 starts at this track and an 11th place finish last year. So nothing that's going to really get your attention when you look at the Dover stats, but something we talk about a lot on the Money Stop is that it's not always just about your numbers at this track, because then betting would be too easy and the sportsbook wouldn't make any money. You got to look into the momentum factor and the fact that this is a team and a driver that has underperformed to standard. But again, they're still 5th in the points. They've had very solid results, very solid speed. However, they're getting to the point where we expected them to be at now. And when they look at what they did the first half of the season as that 45 teams floor, going into Dover now, or a track where he's had respectable results, it could mean very good things for that 45 team. And again, another one where I need to see them pick up some steam before the playoffs. They're going to be in for sure, but are you going to be one of those surprise teams that gets bounced in the 1st or 2nd round because you're not hot at that time? I don't think that the 45 team is going to be caught dead doing that. So I'm looking at Tyler Reddick this week. And I also like another driver that's picking up steam in Chris Buescher, because he's coming off, first of all, he's plus 2,500 for the race win, 8,000 in daily fantasy, which is one of the cheapest drivers in our sleepers category. So when you're looking to build a DFS lineup, Chris Buescher should be pretty much a lock, because he is coming off back-to-back finishes outside the top 15 after a 4-race top 10 streak. So he had the 4 really strong races in a row, now back-to-back outside the top 15. And he is now plus 34 above the playoff cutoff with 6 races left. And you think about the fact that Chris Buescher has a best finish of 7th place at Dover, including a pole, 2 tops 10, all in the next-gen era at Dover. His only top 10s in 14 starts have come recently. And you think about the fact that he's coming off a 17th place finish after starting 18th here in 2024. Average finish puts him just inside the top 20. So once again, for Chris Buescher, a guy that we've seen the results be a little bit inconsistent this year. I clearly had big expectations for that team because I picked them as my dark horse for the championship for this year. And it feels like the last couple of years, that team has had a knack for getting hot at the right time. And I know they're coming off the back-to-back finishes outside the top 15, but again, similarly to the 45 team, but to a lesser degree, they've done enough to stay afloat. They've done enough to points race this year and put themselves in a spot to where the 17 team, all they need is one string of good races, 3-4 races in a row that are really solid and potentially race winning, could put them in really good fortune entering the playoff cutoff. And again, same deal to Tyler Reddick, where at Dover, he's had solid results, nothing that's going to get your attention very quickly, but it just feels like they've had very consistent speed recently. So I'm looking at those 2 drivers as guys that everyone had higher expectations for this year. I look at what they've done so far to this point in the year as their floor, and I look at Dover as a track where they definitely could continue to string together some good results.
Yeah, I think no one's been more against Tyler Reddick than me this season. But to this point, he's been able to capitalize on a very favorable schedule in his case, back-to-back road courses, 3 over the last 5 races. And for that, he's, firmly in contention for that regular season championship once again. And they've looked great. They've looked competitive. So that's a major plus. I wanted to see more from a historical sense in terms of results at Dover. But I think, Toyota's had speed here, obviously. Denny won the last race, and they've looked a lot better as of late. So they should be in store for a really strong run on Sunday. In the case of Chris Buescher, there's very little room for error at this point. I mean, 34 points is very daunting with 6 races to go. And you got guys like Kyle Busch, A.J. Allmendinger, guys of that nature back there.
And somebody below the cutoff wins.
Exactly.
That's a moving target.
There's 4 spots left. So we very well could see more than 16 winners come playoff time. So I think what's troubling for me with Chris Buescher is the fact that he has not been able to get the results on the road courses. And that's where he was able to get his best results the last couple of years in this current car. So looking for him to rebound. RFK's had speed as of late, especially at Dover. 2 guys I'm looking at for sleepers. I got to first kick things off here with one of our other HMS Chevys in Alex Bowman, who is plus 2,000 for the race win and a really solid $8,800 in daily fantasy, coming off a 19th place finish at Sonoma. But prior to that, he had 4 finishes of 11th or better, including 2 top 5s in that span. So he's had a lot of speed as of late, and that's a major improvement from where he was prior to Mexico, where he had that nasty wreck at Michigan. And we thought there'd be a lingering effect with the injury, but turns out perfectly fine on that front. Alex Bowman is one of 6 active winners at Dover, his win coming back in 2021. He finished 8th last year. That was his 4th straight finish inside the top 8 at the Monster Mile. Also has 5 top 5s over his last 7 starts with a 6.4 average finish in that 7-race stretch. So a really, really good sample size. I know a lot of the talk is obviously always going to be on, Kyle Larson, William Byron, obviously Chase Elliott as of late, but do not sleep on Alex Bowman in the sleepers category, man. He's been able to tame the Miles the Monster once before. He could do it again for sure.
By the way, a plus 240 for a top 5. I kind of love that. And minus 130 for a top 10. I kind of love that too for Alex Bowman, because he is the most undervalued Hendrick driver always, but especially at a track like Dover where those numbers speak for themselves.
Exactly. And we've seen it every year. He's good for usually 1 win a year, and it's when you least expect it. So it very well could be once again here at Dover. But I think we got to end this sleepers section talking about Ross Chastain. Ross Chastain, plus 1,200 for the race win and a pretty steep $9,500 in daily fantasy. And the only reason I say that, I think that the value maybe isn't there as much for Ross Chastain because he only has one top 10 over his last 5 starts. So not a great look, but it makes sense when you look at his Dover stats in this current car. Finished 12th there. That was his 4th consecutive top 15 at last year. That is finishing 12th. Tied for the best average with Chase Elliott in this current car at 5.7. Finished second with 93 laps led in 2023 and third with 86 laps led in 2022. So this is a guy with a really good floor for Dover if we're talking the next gen. But I think there is reason for concern and I guess skepticism with his current pace and inability to get the quality results over his last 5 starts. So I feel more optimistic about Alex Bowman, obviously, in that whole Hendrick stable. But, the speed's still in that Trackhouse stable with obviously SVG winning all these races as of late. And Ross Chastain getting that win recently as well. So, again, more confidence in Alex Bowman, I think, over every driver in this sleeper section for me personally, but don't sleep on Ross Chastain, Tyler Reddick, or Chris Buescher as well.
Yeah, and it's more drivers and teams that you need to see them get hot, right? Like we're getting to that home stretch before the playoffs. Like Ross Chastain's a guy that obviously since the championship 4 appearance that people have very high expectations for, and I'm sure he holds himself to those same standards. And you're going to need to see that team, that driver get hot if they want to make a run. And again, like we've seen it happen before where you're not even thinking of Ross Chastain as a championship contender right now. You're not even thinking about Chris Buescher, but all it takes is one good stretch of races. And any of the 4 drivers we just named between Alex Bowman, Chris Buescher, Ross Chastain, and our final sleeper, Tyler Reddick, like if any of those 4 gets hot, the sky is the limit for those 4 drivers because when they are hot, they're among that elite tier of drivers in the sport. So I like that quad of sleepers and Chastain, Bowman, Reddick, and Buescher. Moving to value picks here, Cole, there are a lot of values to be had. And I feel like we're getting to that point too, where there are just certain drivers at this point in the season where they've been recurring names over our value picks. Like early in the season, we loved picking Ryan Preece. We loved picking Carson Hocevar. And the sports books kind of caught up to that. Like we maximized as much value out of those drivers. And I'm sure a lot of our listeners did too, to the point where they're not value picks anymore. But as we get into the next bridge of the season here, there are several other drivers that have made us look really smart the last several weeks, and we've been in on their breakouts when they were at their lowest. They're at their lowest point the entire season. Guys like Ty Gibbs have made us look really smart, and that's why he's one of our value picks again this week, because Ty Gibbs is plus 2,200 for the race win, 7,400 in daily fantasy. He's coming off his 6th finish in a row inside the top 15 after a 7th place at Sonoma. And again, 6 races in a row inside the top 15. We've mentioned him every single one of those 6 weeks. He has an 8.5 average finish over that span of races, an average finish inside the top 10 for a guy that, again, didn't get off to the start he wanted to in his Cup Series career. You're seeing him flex those muscles that everyone knew were there, and you're starting to see the experience come to the forefront. But he's a guy that, unlike the drivers in our sleepers category, he cannot afford a single bad result, right? Because we mentioned that he had such a bad start to the season. It was pretty much as nightmarish of a start to the season as you could think of. Like he was outside the top 30 in points for a lot of the time, and he's kind of resurrected himself to the point where he's now 60 points out of the playoffs, which sounds like a lot, but compared to what it was, it's really not. But again, like if he continues at the rate he's on and has 6 more finishes in the top 15, he's not going to make the playoffs. They know that they're going to have to turn those top 15s into top 5s and probably a win. Like a win is realistically their only shot at getting into the postseason. And think about the fact too, like again, that number is going to continue moving down when a driver behind the cut line in points jumps in front of Ty Gibbs or jumps in front of the drivers that are surrounding them and makes that 60 points suddenly at your 90 points back or something. So I think Ty Gibbs is a guy that, again, we talk about the fact that he has had a really consistent track record the last 6 weeks. And we talk about the fact that the start to his career has not gone the way they've wanted. And with that being said, Dover has been one of his best and most consistent tracks since being a rookie in this sport, where he finished 10th last year and 13th there the year prior, his rookie season. So where Ty Gibbs probably averaged like an average finish inside the 20s those 2 years. He finished 10th and 13th at Dover. So you're talking about a result the last 2 years that was very high above, pretty much twice as good as his regular average finish. And you talk about the fact that they're in a good groove right now. Listen, we keep mentioning Ty Gibbs for a reason. It's because he's made us look really smart. I mean, he was your winner pick 2 weeks ago, right? And he finished in second place. So
correct. Yep.
I think that Ty Gibbs is another name that, like, there's going to be those drivers that get hot at the right time. Some of them will make the playoffs. Some of them will not. And if that team gets into the playoffs, they could be scary. They could be a scary bunch, especially if they pile on a win and potentially look at how the tracks line up in that first round. I like the way they shaped up for Ty Gibbs. And I'm thinking of Eric Jones as well, too, because Eric Jones' value of plus 8,000 is definitely enticing. And at 6,300 in daily fantasy, he is the cheapest of our value picks this week. And here's why. He finished 29th at Sonoma. That was his second straight finish outside the top 25 or 25th or worse. And he has, prior to those 2 races, he had 5 top 15s in the last 6 races. So you were starting to see, and we had talked about it, the fact that Legacy Motor Club had been putting together its most consistent speed week to week, every single week. And then, the sky came kind of crashing down on that team with Eric Jones the last 2 weeks in a row. But the speed has been there. And despite 3 top 10s and only 11 starts at Dover, he has an average finish at this track of 13.8, which is the 4th best in the sport. So he's had a high floor at this track, finished 10th here in 2022 and 16th in his only other next-gen start here. So Eric Jones is a guy that, again, there's a reason that he's plus 8,000 for the race win, and I don't think he's going to win this race. But there's also a reason he's 6,300 in daily fantasy, and you can look at his top 10 bet as one that maybe has a pretty solid outside chance of being a good bet. So I think you look at what that team was doing before their little skid here the last 2 races, and it was very encouraging. And I look at Dover again as a track that he has had a high floor at. And if they can come out and run, top 15 speed, luck into a top 10, that's something that as a bettor, I can definitely be proud of, especially considering the value he's at. So give me Ty Gibbs, give me Eric Jones this week for my value picks.
Yeah, I am all in on Ty Gibbs. I think what we've seen these last handful of races has been really remarkable. And I went on record last week saying I really do think he's going to break through and get that first career cup win at some point this season. And it very well could be at Dover. I mean, you look at this entire stable as a whole, I would argue that JGR has been the best in the field in terms of speed. You had Hamlin score a top 5 at Chicago. You had Chase Briscoe finish runner-up last week. You had, obviously, other guys perform really well. Ty Gibbs, second place at Chicago. So it's like the speed's been there. Denny Hamlin won at this track last year. So Hendrick Motorsports is beatable. We saw that clearly. And it's looking real good for that entire stable, but especially Ty Gibbs. And then in the case of Eric Jones, I think that he is a guy that I feel very comfortable with from a daily fantasy perspective. And for someone that you might want to sprinkle a little bit on a top 10 prop, just because he has a really good floor. And what that tells me is he's a good daily fantasy pick over anything else.
Yes.
So and the speed we've seen from that bunch as of late has been really good as well between him and JHN. So 2 great picks, but we go to Dover. It's all about Miles the Monster, the Beast from the East. I'm a big horror movie guy, obviously, you know that. When you're in a horror movie, there are usually 2 kinds of types that make it to the end. It's the final guy or the final girl, the one that follows all the rules. They have the good morals and whatnot. And there's also the guys with the most experience, the guys that are really bold and aggressive and want to take risks. And 2 guys that come to mind when I think of Taming the Beast and Miles the Monster. 2 champions, 2 winners at this track in Kyle Busch and Brad Keselowski. 2 guys that are in need of big days and big races going forward in the next 6 to make the playoffs and add to their championship winning ways. I'll start with Kyle Busch here, who I feel great about this week, by the way. Plus 3,000 for the race win. $8,300 in daily fantasy is going to be a lock for me. And why do I say that? Because silently, he's riding back-to-back top 10s, and he has now clawed his way somehow to just 37 points below the cutoff, which is 18th in the standings, which it seems like impossible for how that team was doing for a majority of this regular season. But sure enough, he's in contention. He is a 3-time Dover winner, the last coming in 2017, but in his career has nearly 1,400 laps led, a 61% top 10 rate, and a 13.9 average, which, I mean, that's a great sample size for a guy who's been in the sport for a long time. And what that top 10 rate tells me is that he should be a really good prop going forward for a top 10 finish. And we'll get to that as we make our budget and our big money bets. But in the next gen, he's obviously, stood the test of time in taming Miles the Monster. 2 top 10s. He finished 4th place here last year. And he's also won a pole here the last 2 years. So he's had a lot of speed here, despite the troubles with RCR and all that. So I think he's a really, really good sleeper pick for the win, honestly. I think he could very easily sneak away with the win here.
Totally.
So Kyle Busch, one of my favorites for Dover this weekend. And as I alluded to, Brad Keselowski. Brad Keselowski is plus 3,500 for the race win and $7,600 in daily fantasy is a really solid value. Finished a respectable 11th place at Sonoma with 3 top 10s over his last 6 starts. And why I say respectable for last week at Sonoma is because it's a road course. He's horrible on the road courses, especially in the next gen. So that's obviously a major plus. The con is that he's in a must-win scenario, sitting 136 points below the cutoff at this point with 6 races remaining until the playoffs, because the hole they dug themselves into, just the bad luck. We mentioned it from the start of the season. It's just been a really rough go for that 6 team, but I believe they could be in store for a good day. They won at Dover back in 2018, finished 8th in 2023, which that was his best finish in the next gen, and his only top 10 over his last 4 starts. But in his career at Dover, 13.5 average, good enough for 3rd best overall among drivers with over 10 plus starts, over 400 laps led, and only 1 DNF. It's a really important stat, I think, for this weekend. 1 DNF in 26 starts. Obviously, not a lot has gone right for Brad Keselowski. It's going to take a win to get in the playoffs, and with that comes a certain volatility and taking risks. But I think this is a driver where his values are so profitable that I feel like if they were to win before the playoffs begin, which is very possible given the speed of that entire stable with Ryan Preece and Chris Buescher and Brad Kay as of late, that's not a guy that I want to miss out on making bank off of, because, I mean, plus 3,500 right there for a former champion and a former winner at Dover is really, really nice. And I think that daily fantasy value of $7,600 is a borderline lock territory for me.
Yeah, that's part of what I love about those 2 value picks is, like you said, they're the grizzled veterans who know how to win races. Like if they're in a spot where there's a late restart with 5, 10, 15 laps to go even, and they know they need to win. And listen, they're two of the most winningest drivers. Is that the best way to put that? Two of the winningest drivers in the field across their entire careers. And they know they need to do it. I mean, those are 2 of the hungriest guys in the sport. And they know that they're right on that bubble, at least in the case of Kyle Busch, not in the case of Brad. But they've got to win. And I think that when the going gets tough, if they're in a situation where they're duking it out with a 3-time race winner like Kyle Larson or a Chase Elliott who's got 1 under his belt but potentially peaking at the right time, I think that they're going to be very hungry and they're not going to have anything to lose, especially in the case of Brad Kay. And listen, we saw him race with Chase Elliott for the win a few weeks ago at Atlanta. And I think that those are 2 drivers that I like their race winning props a lot. I'm not as keen in the case of Brad Keselowski on like prop bets, top 5, top 10s, like you said, but thinking about those values for 2 guys that know how to win makes me feel pretty good. So that rounds out the value picks. That is our 12 drivers. 12, right? 12. All right. So here they are. Favorites were Chase Elliott, Denny Hamlin, Kyle Larson, William Byron. Sleepers were Ross Chastain, Alex Bowman, Tyler Reddick, Chris Buescher. Value picks were Brad Keselowski, Kyle Busch, Ty Gibbs, and Eric Jones. Looking ahead to big money bets here, Cole. Before we get to that point, I do want to breeze over our loose change, which is the kind of storylines we haven't exactly discussed. And, we sort of breezed over the fact that SVG is a 3-time race winner this season now, and he's actually the fastest driver to 4 wins in his Cup Series career in like 50 years. And he's just dominated the road courses. So my question to you is that his success has only been at the road courses, and it's been so dominant, the success. And there are road courses in the playoffs. So with him being tied for, I think, the 2nd most playoff points right now, do you think he's a legitimate championship contender? What is your feeling on SVG? Because regardless of how, the results have not been consistent outside of the road courses, the playoff points are always going to be there for him. Unless he gets penalized, those are going to be a cushion that he has on top of the fact that there are more road course races to come? Is he a championship contender or somebody we should be looking at?
I don't think so. Obviously, bonus points are a big deal. We saw that happen last year with Tyler Reddick and the regular season title, but there's just not enough working in favor of SVG outside of the road courses for him to be a legitimate contender. I mean, I guess he could sneak away with the win at Talladega in the playoffs if he were to make it that far in the rounds, but I mean, there's just not enough to back up a championship claim for me with the 88 team. Yeah, I mean, they've looked better on the ovals significantly from where they were at the beginning of the year. Definitely contending for top 15s, but man, they got to take a massive leap to really be a legitimate contender once that round of 16 begins, in my opinion.
Yeah, like a little Cinderella run wouldn't surprise me, but I mean, you're not looking at somebody that's
Look at Ty Dillon. Look at Ty Dillon.
Look at speaking of Cinderella runs, who had him in the Final Four? What were the odds on Ty Dillon to win the regular season bracket? I mean, I would have never made that bet. If you could have told me one driver I think wouldn't win the bracket, it would have been Ty Dillon. I mean, it's incredible. But stranger things have happened. So looking ahead to our big money bets now, Cole, we should mention Michael McDowell last week finished in the top 5. He was one of our big money bets at plus 130. We had Chase Elliott in the top 5 at plus 150. We also had a few over-unders that hit. Michael McDowell better than 6.5. Chase Elliott better than 7.5. Ryan Preece better than 16.5. So we had 5 of these bets hit last week. We go to another track in Dover that's been one of our best here. And even our head-to-head bets, we had a couple that smashed last week in Chase Elliott to finish 5 spots ahead of Ryan Blaney and Chris Buescher to finish within 2 spots of Kyle Larson. So with all that being said, success last week. What can we look for this week, maybe?
Well, first off, to recap last week as well, for my $50 budget, I put $20 on Michael McDowell to finish top 5. That one cashed. Mm-hmm. And I believe it was 10 on Elliott to finish top 5, which also cashed. Yep. So if you were to use the $50 budget that we proposed, you came out ahead for sure.
Yeah.
Because McDowell's prop was, I believe, plus 150, and as was Chase Elliott's. So
and we are going to give you
plus 130 and plus 150. Yeah. So you doubled your money at least there.
We're going to give you a $50 wallet as well. We're going to give you our recommendation for $50 in a few minutes here.
Yep. So for big money bets, prop finishes, Chase Elliott top 5 plus 130. That's one that I am hammering once again. I just think that team has looked really good as of late. I think the fastest of the Hendrick stable, and just love how they've looked at Dover. In the Gen 7 era and in his career, in the case of Chase Elliott. And I feel good about Kyle Busch this weekend, in case you couldn't tell. His top 10 prop again is above even payout at plus 110. Like that. So that's one I'm not ready to call it a big money bet. That's one that I put like a $5 on, maybe 10, which I mean, you're only getting like $10 profit off of that, or $5 profit, I should say. But it's still something that you could play around with if you were to cash out in that. But Chase Elliott tops 5 plus 130 for sure. For the over-unders, there's a few really good ones. All drivers that we mentioned in this episode. So Chase Elliott better than 7th place. I like Kyle Busch better than 11.5. So you're getting another positional spread there, basically, with his prop. Brad Keselowski to finish 13th or better. Ty Gibbs 13th or better as well. And then Eric Jones better than 17th. So given his floor and his average finish of 13.9, I believe it was, 13.8, that's a really, really good one to consider as well. And again, for me, when you're combining these props in Grid Rival, the over-unders, driver matchups, I like to look at the deeper values, whether it's positions or spreads. For the head-to-head parlays, I only had 2 that stuck out to me, and even they were not ones that I was too high on. There's William Byron, 2 spots better than Christopher Bell, and then Brad Keselowski, 4 spots better than Austin Cindric, which I do like a lot, actually. So if anything, I would maybe parlay that one with like Eric Jones better than 17.5 and another positional prop. But I think the value here for this week is definitely going to be within the top 5 props, top 10 props, and the better, worse positional finishes.
And we've been banking out on these the last few weeks. Like we said, there were 5 successful last week, and that was down from the weeks prior. So we've had a very good success rate that is above 70% with these over the course of the season. So listen up to those big money bets. Also, our daily fantasy lineup, Cole, it is pretty much all drivers we discussed during this episode between Kyle Larson leading it off at 11,500. We mentioned he's the most expensive driver, and there are such good other values that we mentioned that you can pretty much cater this lineup to work around Kyle Larson. Alex Bowman is the second most expensive at 8,800. Got Kyle Busch, Brad Keselowski as another pair of our sleepers who are also value picks. And then our other two value picks of Ty Gibbs and Eric Jones. So you had for this week all four of our value picks in this lineup, and that gave you the budget to play around with to get both Alex Bowman and Kyle Larson.
Yeah, this is I feel great about this lineup, honestly.
Mm-hmm.
And I think, so for starters, I feel better about Chase Elliott than Kyle Larson. However, given the fact that we did use Jones, who is only, again, $6,300, you were able to get Kyle Larson in there. So I just wanted to give the listeners out there an idea of how you can fit Kyle Larson, most expensive driver at 11,500, into your lineup. But I mean, I feel great about Alex Bowman, Kyle Busch, BK, Ty Gibbs. Overall, very well-rounded. And again, if you feel better about someone like William Byron or Denny Hamlin, you can fit him in there or them in there as well in taking someone like Eric Jones and Ty Gibbs at the back end of this thing.
Now, something new we started last week. We mentioned our idea of giving you an imaginary $50. Let's say you're using $50. You've got units of, say, $5. So you have 10 units, $5 each, making up for a wallet of $50, right? So of all the different types of bets that there are to consider, we always like to say, don't put all your chips in one basket. It's important to spread the love a little bit. There's a lot of different types of bets that you can make. And as you pointed out, this was profitable last week. So thinking about a $50 budget this week, Cole, the way we kind of started this last week was sprinkling on a couple winners, a couple top fives, a couple top tens. I feel like that's kind of the safest way to do it, depending on what the values are this week. So starting with the big money bet of Chase Elliott, top five, $20, and $5 on a win. So half of your budget there is made up of Chase Elliott, $20 of that at plus 130 for a top five, and then plus 1,000 for a win for Chase Elliott. That takes up half the budget. And then there are several other bets that we could probably use to cater with this $50 too.
Yeah. And the reason why we do two drivers for these props, whether it be a win or a top five and a top 10, is because you want to have an insurance out there. In case Chase Elliott does not win, you want to have the $20 on his top five or whatever denominational value you have out there. So you are able to cash in should he not win, but do really well, like we are expecting. The other driver I would expect to maybe dethrone him from victory lane would be Kyle Larson. Again, playing off his speed and success at Dover, his win in high limit, I think always plays a big factor for me anyway, in picking him for the race win on Sundays. So I would put $5 on Kyle Larson to win. And then I'm looking at two $10 bets for top 10 props. One in Kyle Busch at plus 110 and one in Brad Keselowski at plus 110 as well. Again, two savvy veterans, two guys who have looked much better as of late, especially in the case of Kyle Busch. But overall, I think the rule of thumb with me is I will usually pick two race winners. I'll put more money on the driver that I feel more comfortable with, and then I'll put their insurance bet down for their finisher prop. And then I'll put another $5 down or lesser amount on the other race winner that I feel good about, just in case. And then I'll usually look for a top 10 prop that's above even payout or a top 5 prop above even payout. And it just so happens that I feel the most comfortable in Kyle Busch and Brad Keselowski.
And you could very easily just, like, let's say you're not balling and you're just getting into betting. You could do the same thing with a $25 budget, and you can turn that into $3 units and say do $12 on a Chase Elliott top 5, and then $3 on each of Chase Elliott and Kyle Larson to win, and so on. So that's why $50 is kind of like the imaginary amount we're giving you, because it's, probably pretty versatile for somebody that's just getting into betting. But also, if you're big balling, you could do a $100 budget and double all those marks and do a $40 on Chase Elliott top 5. So depends how confident you're feeling. But if you're trying to feel confident, just look at our results from the last few weeks and you'll see everything you need to see.
6 weeks, by the way, 6 straight races where we've had this just immaculate run. That's insane.
It is insane. It's the summer of the Money Stop, and really the season of the Money Stop, but it's especially the summer of the Money Stop, heating up with the weather. Looking ahead, Cole, race winner and sleeper picks. We want to give people, amount of time we drop these episodes every Friday because, it's before cars hit the track. We want to give you a chance to, assess all this information while you're watching qualifying and practice. And we always caution that there are certain bets you want to get in before qualifying and practice because there might be value that the sports books haven't moved on yet. And there might be some that your mind might change, and especially in the case of daily fantasy lineup. We never recommend placing a DFS bet until you've seen the starting lineup because of the all-important place differential points. But long story short, we've got to pick our race winner and sleeper picks this week. And I don't remember who picked first last week.
You did.
I picked SVG, didn't I?
No,
I didn't. No, I picked
you picked Chase Elliott,
right? I picked Chase Elliott. All right, so you're going to Dover. You got first pick this week.
Well, guess what? I'm gonna go Chase Elliott.
Bang!
That's my guy. That's my guy this weekend. Yeah, you just get these intuitions. We've gotten them pretty successfully over the last 6 weeks, as just noted. And my gut telling me Chase Elliott. Teams looked excellent as of late. I think the best in that Hendrick stable, and he's been the best of the best statistically in the next gen, and almost the best statistically over his career in the series at Dover. So, give me that number 9 team to slay Miles the Monster this weekend.
I like that pick. Obviously, that was where my mind was kind of headed. And I feel I have to pick a Hendrick Chevy this week until proven otherwise. And the Hendrick Chevy I'm choosing is William Byron. I just like what you said about William Byron. I feel that, that's another team where like they were so hot to begin the year. They're in this summer slump that we see every year, but I think they're going to pull out of it. Like this is a team I legitimately feel is going to be a championship contender. It is mind boggling to me that they haven't won more races this year. And I think that this is a week that I think that William Byron is going to slay Miles, and that's going to send that team into a surge entering the playoffs. And I love the way that this is kind of shaping up for the 24 bunch.
Isn't it weird that he's the only driver in the current Hendrick lineup without a win there?
It is weird.
Because you got Bowman, Larson, and Chase who have won there. No Byron, which surprised me. Because, I think back to that 193 lap leading performance he had, and it feels like he should have won that thing.
I know.
So.
And you could say that about, there's so many other races this year where it felt like William Byron deserved a win.
Oh, yeah.
And, eventually
only one.
He's going to start clicking these off. He's going to start clicking these off. And I can't believe the only one was at Daytona, too. That is not going to be the case by the end of the season. I would be floored if that team doesn't have 4 or 5 race wins, say 3 or 4 race wins, depending on how these next few weeks shake out. But I do have first pick at a sleeper. Cole drivers outside the top 15 in odds. Start with Brad Keselowski. I'll leave him for you. And I'll go with a sleeper of my own that we haven't mentioned, and Josh Berry, because he's a guy that he's had some really good glimpses this year. We didn't mention him on the outline, but he's the type of guy you think of at kind of like a grassroots short track like Dover is. And he's the guy that we're probably not discussing because of the value being at, I think, the 16th highest driver in odds. And another driver that is going to be in the playoffs this year that like they would love to have a little bit more of a cushion. And this is probably looking ahead, one of the better tracks that he has a shot at to put up a good result this week. So I know we didn't mention him, but I kind of like Josh Berry as a good my sleeper pick for the win this week.
All right, really quickly, I'll boringly pick Brad Keselowski for my sleeper.
For sure.
But I'm very happy you mentioned Josh Berry because he almost made the cut for this outline. He's only had 2 starts here, but he has 1 top 10 and a top 15 here. So top 15 in both starts here at Dover. And he's a guy that has run well on the mile and a half tracks. Results maybe not have been there as of late, but he's had the speed at Dover. I think back to when he was filling in for Chase Elliott, ironically, and he ran very well here. So that's a great call. And one thing that we always, I guess we usually fail to note is that whenever we pick a driver that's not on the outline as a sleeper, more of a gut call, they usually end up with a top 10 or a top 15, like your Ryan Preece calls usually. So
right.
That's one that your ear should be perked up for, and definitely consider Josh Berry for your lineups, and maybe even top 10 prop.
I could not agree more. This is the Auto Trader Echo Park Automotive 400, and Cole is going to be there. I feel like it's a loaded question to ask you what you're most excited for. I feel like seeing Miles the Monster in person just has to be surreal.
I've literally had dreams about this, multiple dreams the last few weeks about like seeing Miles in person. I cannot freaking wait for this. It's at the top of my NASCAR bucket list. I mentioned this on SpeedFreaks. I've gotten crap for it. I would rather see Miles the Monster over the bricks at Indianapolis. I am so excited. Because we got in the sport relatively late, obviously 2008-ish era. Yep. And that's one of my earliest memories is just seeing that big concrete monster in Miles and seeing these cars rip the concrete and watch Jimmy Johnson dominate and Joey Logano barrel roll back in 2009. There's so many good memories, so much great racing here. And I just cannot wait to meet Miles the Monster. It's going to be so sick.
Yeah, this is going to be awesome.
And I'll be damned if I'm not bringing back a Miles the Monster plush for Penny and Winnie.
That's huge. I didn't even think about that. They probably have stuffed animal Miles the Monsters.
Oh, yeah.
It's such a no-brainer. Maybe like a Christmas ornament. They got to have everything.
I will probably go broke.
Any more marketable like track mascot than Miles the Monster?
No, not at all.
There's no way. There's nothing that's even close.
And also, shout out to HMS. I know we talked a lot this episode, but their marketing department's been out amazing this year with these themed hats for each race weekend. Have you seen the hats for this weekend at Dover?
I don't think I have.
They're freaking sick.
Wait,
so they're concrete gray. They have obviously the sponsor logo. That's also like a darker shade of gray, and the number that's the same shade of gray. But they have the Miles the Monster like red eyes on the side as well. It's amazing. Really badass. Shout out Cody Big Johnson. I might bring him something back to the old Lucas Oil Studios. We'll see.
I'm looking for them. I can't seem to find it while we're talking here, but I'm very excited to see what these look like because that sounds awesome.
It's badass. Yeah.
And just a short 2.5 hour drive from where we're sitting right here in New Jersey. Unfortunately, I'll be in Hartford, Connecticut again. Baseball season rolls on. Second half. Let's get it rolling. Second half of the NASCAR season. Second half of the baseball season. We're going to drop the jack on your most important NASCAR betting stop of the day. And if you've been involved with us for a half, you have built up quite a bankroll. And if you're just joining in now, keep letting it ride. Take our advice, listen back to previous episodes and look at where the drivers we mentioned have finished. Look at where some of our prop bets and, everything else that has taken shape. Like we mentioned 6 races in a row, but really it extends beyond that. It's been since the start of the year. So this has been a fun season of the Money Stop, fun season of NASCAR, and there are 6 races to go before the playoffs. So this is probably our only time on camera together until maybe championship weekend in Phoenix. So get a good look. Next time you see us, we'll be in 2 separate boxes. Once again, he's Cole. I'm Steven. I'm going to try and make it to the championship race this year. No promises, but I'm definitely looking to come out Halloween weekend, which just so happens to be championship weekend at Phoenix. And then you might get some on-track products with us, like this. This is not on track. This is 2.5 hours from Dover, but we would love to be together again by the end of the season. So consider this our little twice a year, our little once or twice a year get together. For the Money Stop. So yeah, maybe we're bringing some good mojo to Miles the Monster. Who knows?
Of course,
he's going to get slayed.
Always.
He's going to get slayed. We're going to drop the jack here on the Money Stop. For all of us with Speed Freaks, Cole, Steven, and the entire crew, Cody Johnson, everyone, we thank you so much for tuning in. We'll see you next time.